So we come to chapter 21. Now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them. God is talking to Moses. This is the first mention of the word judgments in the Bible. It's mentioned quite a few times. Now these are not the commandments. This is different. The judgments. Skeptics read this chapter and say, Hovind, your Bible says you're supposed to do A, B, C. Well, let's just read it carefully and see what it says. He said, these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them. If thou buy a Hebrew servant, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. God said, this is my judgment. See, there's a difference between judgments and commandments and ordinances and statutes. Just like I tell people, Anna, about the difference between knowledge and wisdom. You love that one, don't you?
No.
She doesn't like that one? You haven't heard that, have you, Brother Rick?
Oh, no, not now.
Not now?
I think I'd like to hear it.
Not now. Bible study.
It is Bible study. There's a difference in different words. Okay, we'll talk about it some other time. There's a website, AV 1611, Authorized Version 1611. They have the definition of different Bible words up there, Bible dictionary. Sorry. Judgment. The act of judging, the act or process of the mind in comparing its ideas. Sometimes you make a judgment. Should I buy the 4-door or the 2-door? Should I cook potatoes or should I cook, soup for tonight for supper? It's a judgment call. To find their agreement or disagreement and to ascertain truth, or the process of examining facts and arguments to ascertain propriety and justice, or the process of examining the relationships between one proposition and another. You got 2 options on the table. 2 people offer you a job. Well, let's make a judgment. Which job should I take? This is a judgment. The faculty of the mind by which man is enabled to compare ideas and ascertain a relationship of terms and propositions. As a man of clear judgment or sound judgment. The judgment may be biased by prejudice. Judgment supplies the want of certain knowledge. The determination of the mind formed from comparing the relations of ideas or the comparison of facts and arguments in the formation of our judgments. We get all the facts and then you make a judgment on what's the proper thing to do. So this whole chapter that the atheists get all bent out of shape about is not commandments of the Lord. It is the judgments of the Lord. It is God saying, this is how I think you ought to do things. Now, when he gives a commandment, that has different punishment for not following it. These are the judgments of God. Moses, these people have been slaves for 215 years. Here's how I think you should handle. Now, they're living in a society where slavery is just normal. If someone came into the South 150 years ago when they had slaves all over the place, you can't just say, let them all go. Well, this is part of their economy. I mean, this is how they're going to pick the cotton, etc. It was a tough call for the Union, North versus South. So it would be a wise ruler of a city or a county or a state in the South to say, here's my judgment on the matter. Here's how I think you should treat your slaves. Until we can resolve the bigger problem and let them go, here's the judgment and how they should be treated. So this whole chapter is about judgments, not commandments. So that's how they get all bent out of shape. Leviticus, he said, if ye shall despise my statutes, or if your soul shall abhor my judgments, so that ye will not do all my commandments, but that you break my covenant. These are all different things, folks. Covenants, commandments, judgments, statutes. Statute's a law. Commandment is a law. Judgment is, hey, here's how I wish you would do it. I think you'd be wise to do it this way. In Deuteronomy, therefore thou shalt love the Lord thy God and keep his charge and his statutes and his judgments and his commandments. They're 3 different things. God separates them clearly. You parents do that with your kids. I think you should go to bed by 9 o'clock. Now you can make it a rule if you want. You have to go to bed by 9. But a wise dad would say, in my best judgment, I think, you should probably not have that extra cookie or whatever. It's a judgment call. It's not a commandment. It's not a law. They're not breaking the law by having the cookie. They're violating your good judgment by having that 14th cookie, or whatever. So, if you have a slave, here's the judgments that God's giving them. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. So if you get a Hebrew slave, after 6 years, he gets to go free. If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. That's if the wife was with him when he came into servitude. If his master have given him a wife, and she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. This is the judgment. God said, here's how I think you ought to do it. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. In other words, I want to stay working for you the rest of my life. A voluntary servant. I'm going to come into this and I'm going to work for you for the rest of my life. Then his master shall bring him to the judges, and he shall bring him to the door, or unto the door post, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl. That's like an ice pick. Put his ear up to the door and poke a hole in it. Pierced ear. And that's a permanent sign that everybody can see this guy loves his master and wants to work for him. You know, people ought to be able to tell by the kind of music you listen to and the kind of stories you tell, and they should be able to tell, wow, that guy loves the Lord or that girl loves the Lord. They don't want to listen to the bad stuff. When I hear somebody who loves to listen to the evil rock, some of the vulgar stuff in rock music and things like that, I say, something's wrong. Because 49 years ago, I gave my heart to the Lord, and I said, Lord, you can have my ears, you can have my eyes, you can have my hands. I want to please you. So if a servant says, I want to stay with this master, okay, pierce his ear. Poke it through with an ice pick. Make a permanent hole in it. You got pierced ears, you got pierced ears. You don't have pierced ears? Okay. And shall bore his ear through, and he shall serve him forever. So this is God giving his judgments. Here's how I think you guys ought to do this. And if a man sell his daughter to be a maidservant, she shall not go out as the men servants do. Treat the girls differently. This is God's judgment. She's going to be a maidservant. And if she please not her master, who hath betrothed her to himself, that means engaged, he hired her as a servant, I'm going to marry this girl. Then he shall let her be redeemed. Or to sell her to a strange nation, he shall have no power. See, because these strange nations, the neighboring tribes, did not have the same rules and commandments and judgments and statutes. You know, there are probably more slaves now in the world than there have ever been.
Wow.
Millions of people are in slavery right now. Muslims are allowed to have slaves in their religion. I mean slaves, not servants, not hired people that were not employees, slaves. Yeah. Seeing hath dealt deceitfully with her. And if he have betrothed her unto his son, he shall deal with her after the manner of daughters. So God is saying, my judgment is, I think when you get a girl to be a servant, you should treat her like your daughter. How many countries do that? None. How many other religions do that? None. God is giving his judgments. Here's how it ought to be done. And the judgments, even the judgments of God, his commandments are perfect and flawless, and the judgments of God are like, wow, this is so true. This is the way it ought to be. If he take him another wife, so if he does marry that one but marries another one, he's not saying you should have more than one wife. He's saying if you do. Remember, these are all things God is dealing with the society as they are. He never told them to take a second wife or a third wife, but if you do, here's how you treat them. So he's not saying you should, he's saying if you do, this is how you treat them. Her raiment and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. And if he do not these three unto her, then she shall go out free without money. Oh, so you're not going to provide my food, my raiment, the duty of marriage? Okay, she gets to go free. That's God's judgment on the matter, how it ought to be done. He that smiteth a man, so that he die, shall be surely put to death. If you hit somebody and kill him, you die. This is another example, like the kennel, about the prison system doesn't exist in God's economy. The only time you were locked up was for 7 days to look and see if you got leprosy. Yeah. If you kill somebody, America has gone nuts. What happens today if somebody kills somebody?
They get free housing and food?
Yeah, go to prison for the rest, and get free housing and food the rest of their life.
Wow.
Even jobs?
And the people, the family of the guy that got killed, has to pay the groceries for the guy who killed him. Don't they? Yeah. And if a man lie not in wait, but God deliver him into his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. This is an accidental killing. If you're planning to kill somebody, premeditated murder is different than accidental. I mean, you're driving in your car and you accidentally hit somebody and kill them. You don't hate them. And God said, if you accidentally kill somebody, He later says, I'm going to give you 6 different cities in the new land I'm going to give you, the promised land. I'm going to give you 6 cities of refuge. Now here's the deal. You accidentally kill your neighbor. However, axe head flies off the handle or something, okay? And you kill your neighbor. Oh, I'm so sorry. Take off running. Because there's that first few moments or first few hours or days of extreme rage. If somebody runs over your daughter or son out on the street and it's an accident, you're going to be angry enough to kill them for a while until you cool down. So God planned for a cooling period. I'm going to give you 6 cities. If you accidentally kill somebody, run to that city. Now, if the guy can catch you before you get there and kills you, nothing happens.
Like in our case, run to Mexico.
Yeah. So, but if he makes it to that city of refuge, the people in that city will protect him until there can be a fair trial. All that does is promise a fair trial. It doesn't promise he's not going to get killed. It just promises a fair trial. God's judgments are amazing. He knows how people are. You can do things. It's a crime of passion or rage. Our system allows for that. You do something, your momentary insanity. Well, he ran over my sister, and so I just got angry and shot him. But if you run over your sister and you wait 5 years to shoot the guy, well, that's a little different. Now it's premeditated. So he said, I'm going to give you a place where you can flee to. But if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, he sneaks up on him, purposeful killing the guy. That's different than an accidental killing. So God's laws and statutes and judgments allow for all of this. Thou shalt take him from mine altar. In other words, if he goes in premeditated and murders somebody, even if he runs into the altar and hangs onto the altar of God, drag him out and kill him. That happened to one guy. When Solomon became king, one of the guys who were the bad guys ran into the altar and held onto the altar. Solomon said, go drag him off the altar and kill him. And they did, following this judgment of God. Okay, 400 and some years later, happened to, what's the guy's name? I forget now. Adonijah? I think it was Adonijah, yeah. He that smiteth his father or his mother shall be surely put to death. You hit your mom or dad, we're going to kill you. That was the rule. He that stealeth a man, this would be kidnapping, and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, if you kidnap somebody and sell them, or you kidnap them and keep them, he shall surely be put to death. So God's judgment is, kidnapping is a capital offense. Premeditated murder is a capital offense. You don't lock the guy up for 30 years, you kill him. That's good for society. It's good for the family. They can finally get some closure. Like Napoleon, they're walking this guy up to the guillotine or hang him or, I forget, cut his head off, going to kill this guy, capital punishment. Somebody said, you think this is going to deter crime? They said, it will for him. He ain't going to do no more crime. He's done right here today. Okay. He that curseth his father or his mother shall be surely put to death. Now just suppose, we have no record in the Bible of this ever being, they never did this that we know of. But suppose that was the rule in America. How would kids treat their parents?
Differently.
There'd be no kids.
There'd be no kids.
Especially in America.
All Dad has to do is, hey son, would you go read Exodus 21:17, please? Yeah, okay. If men strive together, 2 men get in a fight, and one smite another with a stone or with his fist, and he die not, but keep his bed. You hit him, you injure him enough where he's got to stay in bed, go to the hospital or something. If he rise again and walk abroad upon his staff, he's able to get up, but he's got to have a walking stick. Now you cripple him somehow. Then shall he that smote him be quit. Only he shall pay for the loss of his time. So you hurt this guy, he had to spend 3 months in bed. What's 3 months' salary for that guy? You got to pay it. That's similar to our laws, isn't it here? If you injure somebody, you got to pay the damages you do. And shall cause him to be thoroughly healed. However long it takes, you make sure he's completely healed up. And you pay the bills. Perfectly fair. So God is giving his judgments. If a man smite his servant or his maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall be surely punished. Notwithstanding, if he continue a day or 2, he shall not be punished, for he is his money. In other words, this is how he makes his income, by having these servants. If men strive and hurt a woman with child, woman's pregnant, the men are fighting, and the woman gets hurt, so that her fruit depart from her, causes an abortion, miscarriage, and yet no mischief follow, in other words, the woman is fine, he shall be surely punished according as the woman's husband will lay upon him. You injure a woman, she loses the baby, the husband can say, you owe me $5 million. No, let's make it $50 million. Whatever the husband says, you got to pay it. That's what it says. That was God's judgment. And he shall pay as the judges determine. So the punishment will be whatever the husband says. I want that guy to have 30 lashes, and the judges say, you owe the guy, 10 cows and 4 sheep or whatever. And if any mischief follow, in other words, something happens to the woman, then thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. You poke out somebody's eye, they bring you to court and poke out your eye. You break their leg, we're going to come bring you to court and break your leg. This is the law that God gave, or the judgments that God gave down. Now, Jesus talked about this in Matthew chapter 5. Ye have heard that hath been said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Twain means 2. See, the Jews were under Roman authority during Jesus' time. The Roman soldiers had that big heavy backpack they had to carry and all their stuff. They could stop any Jew anywhere, anytime, and require them to carry their stuff for 1 mile. They had milestones all over, stones all over. They called it, there's a stone. I called it a milestone, okay? They had rocks every mile.
We have mile markers?
Mile markers, yep. And they'd say, oh, hey, Jew, come here. I'm tired. Carry my backpack for the next mile. And they were required to. Jesus said, if somebody tells you to carry it a mile, carry it 2 miles. Yeah. This is going to show them kindness. Instead of, I'm going to do the very bare minimum, he said, do more than this. Somebody smacks you on the cheek, give them the other cheek also. It's hard to do.
Wow.
By the way, you only got 2 cheeks. After that, it doesn't say what to do. Okay. Burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. If any man smite the eye of his servant, or the eye of his maid, that it perish. You smack him and blind him in one eye. He shall let him go free for his eye's sake. So if you've got a permanent servant, a permanent slave, and you smack them and hit them and they lose their eye, okay, he gets to go free now. That would cause the master to be a little more careful in how he treats his servant. How many countries today are just completely brutal with their slaves?
Brutal.
God said, you shouldn't do that. If he smite out his manservant's tooth or his maidservant's tooth, get mad at him and smack him and knock their tooth out, he gets to go free. You knock my tooth out, I'm out of here. If an ox gore a man or a woman, that they die, then the ox shall be surely stoned. This would be similar if you have a pit bull, or if you have a Doberman, or you have some kind of dog in your yard and it bites somebody and kills them, the ox shall be stoned. The animal should be killed, and his flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be quit. He's off the hook. So if the ox accidentally, we got their horns, and pokes somebody and kills them, you kill the ox, but it's over right there.
Well,
But
they don't eat it because
there might be something in the bloodstream from the ox being mean, or rabies or something else. But if the ox were wont to push with his horn in time past, that means this ox did this all the time. Let's take an analogy. Your neighbor's dog is always going around biting people. And everybody knows that your dog does that, or the dog does that. Now that's different than if it's a first-time accidental thing. Because the ox might accidentally swing his head and poke somebody and kill him. It's an accidental thing. Well, kill the ox and you're done. But if everybody knows this is a mean cow or a mean ox or a mean dog or whatever, okay? And it hath been testified to his owner. People said, I warned him. But that he hath killed a man, and he hath not kept him in. The owner didn't keep him tied up. But that he hath killed a man or woman, the ox shall be stoned, and his owner also shall be put to death. We've been warning you about that dog. He bit 3 kids. Now you bit somebody else. Okay, the owner gets killed. That would cause them to be a little more careful about what pets they keep, wouldn't it? Yeah. if there be laid on him a sum of money, now the law says you can be killed. But if he lay on him a sum of money, then he shall give for the ransom of his life whatsoever is laid upon him. The people can say, we'll take 5 million instead. Yeah, but I have to sell everything. Okay, never mind, we'll kill you. Oh, okay, I'll sell everything. Right?
Yeah.
Whatever they say, you got to pay. This is God's judgments, Exodus 21. Whether he have gored a son or gored a daughter, according to this judgment shall it be done unto him. If the ox shall push a manservant or a maidservant, he shall give unto their master 30 shekels of silver. How much did they give for Jesus? 30 shekels of silver. Yeah. And the ox shall be stoned. If a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover it. This is a construction type job. If you're doing construction and you don't put a fence up, if you dig a well in your yard and you don't keep the kids out, you're responsible. You're building a house and you don't prop up the walls. You know, if you do something unsafe and an ox or an ass fall therein, the owner of the pit shall make it good. So you dug a pit, you didn't protect it, your neighbor's cow came along and fell in, you got to make it right. Buy him a new cow.
Yeah.
And give money unto the owner of them, but the dead beast shall be his. So you dig a pit, you don't protect it, you don't cover it, neighbor's cow walks in, you got to give him a new cow and you get to keep the dead one. This is God giving his judgments. This is how it ought to be done. To us, we would think a lot of this stuff is common sense.
Yes, it is.
But think what this sounds like to people who have been in slavery for 215 years. Like, wow, I never thought of that. That's a good idea. They didn't have to make any of these decisions. For the last 215 years, all they had to do was say, please don't beat me, master. I'll build that pyramid faster, okay? And if one man's ox hurt another, that he die, then they shall sell the live ox and divide the money of it, and the dead ox also shall they divide. You know, get some steaks out of it or whatever. So this is if it's accidental, first time. But if it be known that the ox hath used to push in time past, same thing. If you knew this was a vicious ox, now the owner shall, and the owner has not kept him in, he shall surely pay for ox, and the dead shall be his own. Oh, your ox killed my ox, and we knew that was a mean ox. You got to buy me a new one. And the dead ox, you get to keep your dead one. So, this is God's judgments in Exodus 21. These are not commandments. These are judgments. That's different. Now, the atheists have been writing all kinds of comments on my YouTube channel. It's funny to read some of them. I think you cannot be that stupid. They really are, okay? But I want you to think for just a minute. You've been picking at all the little details in God's laws and God's judgments. Now think just for a minute what you believe. What is your basis for righteousness and right and wrong? Where do you, if we are just evolved from nothing,
Why would it matter?
Might makes right.
how can you have any laws? I've asked evolutionists all over the country many times. I say, guys, I got a simple question for you. If evolution is true, how do you tell right from wrong? How do you tell right from wrong? How do you make judgments and commandments and laws about anything? How do you tell right from wrong? You have to borrow Christian values, don't you? Because this is what they want to believe. Here's why. Because a dot of nothingness that explodes doesn't have any standards. And they don't like God's rules, like saying, thou shalt not commit adultery. They don't like that rule, so let's deny God exists. That's the reason they like evolution. The reason is they like evolution is not because they have scientific evidence for it at all, none. It's because they like the freedom it gives them from God's judgments and commandments and statutes and standards. That's the reason. Hello, wake up.
Notice the
You're complaining about Exodus 21 and wondering about the judgments that God gave about slavery, and you believe this stuff. Go look in the mirror and write on there, underneath the bottom of the mirror, to remind yourself, write moron in great big letters with lipstick. Because if you believe this, you are a moron.